You thought God was being silent, but he was actually being protective. Let me ask you something. What if the delay wasn't a denial, but a divine detour? What if that heartbreak wasn't to break your soulmate, but to build them for you? See, we spend so much time praying, God, bring them into my life. But what if God was working overtime, saying, no, I'm keeping them out of situations that would destroy them before they meet you? You don't even know the storms your soulmate survived just to stand where they will when they finally meet you. You're not waiting in vain. You know, sometimes we spend so much time focused on what we want, we don't even realize that God's greatest miracles are the things he never let happen. And I'm talking about your soulmate here, the one you've been praying for, waiting for, dreaming about. While you were thinking, where are they, God? He was up in heaven saying, you have no idea what I just blocked them from. See, when God is protecting someone for a purpose, he doesn't just guard their life, he guards their journey. He guards their heart, he guards their time. And the truth is, God has blocked some things in your soulmate's life that would have broken them. Not because they were weak, but because they were still becoming. Just like you had moments where you almost gave your heart to someone who would have ruined your spirit. They had moments where they were standing at a crossroads and God, rich in mercy, stepped in and said, not this, not now, not them. Maybe your soulmate was in a relationship that looked good on the outside. Maybe they thought it was love. Maybe they were planning a future with someone who smiled with their lips but didn't protect their soul. And right before they got too deep, God shut it down, and it hurt. Oh, it hurt them. They cried, they questioned. They probably even asked, God, why would you take that away from me? But now we know, because what felt like rejection was actually protection. That relationship would have drained their spirit. It would have left them doubting their worth. It would have buried their potential under the pressure of being enough for someone who was never sent by God in the first place. Think about it like this. Imagine you're driving down a highway at night, and all you can see is what your headlights show you. That's how we live. We only see what's ahead of us in the moment. But God sees the whole road. He sees the cliff you can't see yet. He sees the deer about to jump into the road. He sees the accident waiting to happen 3 miles ahead. And so sometimes he pulls your soulmate off the road, reroutes them, slows them down, not because he's punishing them, but because he's preserving them for you. They might have been offered a job in a city far away and it fell through, and they thought, God, why did you close that door? But had they taken that job, they would have met someone who would have manipulated their kindness. They would have entered a culture that pressured them to become someone God never intended them to be. They might have walked so far from who they really are, they would have forgotten how to love the way they were designed to. So God said, no, I'll block it. Or maybe they were about to settle. That's a real word, settle. You don't just settle in relationships, you settle in how you see yourself. You settle when you stop believing there's more. And your soulmate might have been right there, ready to say yes to someone who loved their appearance but couldn't handle their anointing. Someone who liked their smile but couldn't lead them in prayer. Someone who clapped for their success but crumbled when they saw their strength. And right when they were about to say yes to less than they deserved, God said, this one's mine. I've got a promise attached to their life, and I won't let them give it away just because they're lonely. Some of the greatest things God does are invisible. They're quiet. They don't make noise or headlines. They're the silent detours and the subtle delays, the message that didn't get delivered, the person who ghosted them before it got serious, the event they didn't attend, the timing that didn't align. It wasn't coincidence, it was God putting his hand between them and destruction. And I want you to think about what that means for you. That your soulmate, your future person, is not coming to you as someone half-healed or half-hearted. No, they're coming to you as someone God has preserved. Someone who didn't just survive, but was protected. That's different. That means they didn't just crawl to you broken. They grew into wholeness because God cut off what was trying to contaminate them before they ever gave you their love. Maybe today you're thinking, God, why haven't I met them yet? But I believe God would answer, because I'm still blocking what would break them. I'm still cleaning what would confuse them. I'm still guarding their heart for you. That's love. That's intentionality. That's divine preparation. And one day, when your soulmate tells you about the things they almost got trapped in, the people they almost chose, the paths they almost took, you're going to lift your hands and thank God for every time He said no, because that no protected the yes of your love story. So don't lose heart in the waiting. God's not just preparing you, He's protecting them. And when your paths finally cross, you'll realize they didn't come through luck or timing or fate. They came through a God who blocked what would have broken them because He was saving their best for you. We live in a world where we love what's visible, we celebrate what's public, we honor the highlight reels, the success stories, the wedding photos, and the social media posts. But what if I told you that the most important part of your soulmate story happened in a place you couldn't see? What if the real preparation didn't happen in the spotlight, but in the shadows? Because some of God's greatest work isn't done in public, it's done in private. He developed them in the dark. Think about a seed you plant it in the ground. You water it. You give it time. And before you ever see a sprout break through the soil, something powerful is happening underground. The seed is dying to its old form. It's cracking, it's shifting. Roots are forming. Gave you their love. Maybe today you're thinking, God, why haven't I met them yet? But I believe God would answer, because I'm still blocking what would break them. I'm still cleaning what would confuse them. I'm still guarding their heart for you. That's love. That's intentionality. That's divine preparation. And one day, when your soulmate tells you about the things they almost got trapped in, the people they almost chose, the paths they almost took, you're going to lift your hands and thank God for every time He said no, because that no protected the yes of your love story. So don't lose heart in the waiting. God's not just preparing you, He's protecting them. And when your paths finally cross, you'll realize they didn't come through luck or timing or fate. They came through a God who blocked what would have broken them because He was saving their best for you. We live in a world where we love what's visible, we celebrate what's public, we honor the highlight reels, the success stories, the wedding photos, and the social media posts. But what if I told you that the most important part of your soulmate story happened in a place you couldn't see? What if the real preparation didn't happen in the spotlight, but in the shadows? Because some of God's greatest work isn't done in public, it's done in private. He developed them in the dark. Think about a seed you plant it in the ground. You water it. You give it time. And before you ever see a sprout break through the soil, something powerful is happening underground. The seed is dying to its old form. It's cracking, it's shifting. Roots are forming. Structure is being built. Strength is being developed beneath the surface. And it's the same with your soulmate. Before they ever show up in your life, before they ever smile across a room at you, God has been developing them in a place where no one could see. And the hard part, development in the dark feels lonely. It feels like being overlooked. Maybe your soulmate has had seasons where they asked, God, why am I still single? Or why does it feel like everyone else is moving forward, but I'm stuck? They might have felt like life was passing them by, like they were on pause while the world was in fast forward. But what they didn't see, what none of us see when we're in it, is that God had them hidden, not forgotten. Protected, not rejected. God was developing them in the dark so they wouldn't be destroyed in the light. They had to go through silent battles so they could learn how to fight, not physically, but spiritually. They had to pray alone so that one day they could pray with you in unity. They had to face rejection so they wouldn't seek validation from the wrong places. They had to learn how to depend on God in the midnight hour so they wouldn't depend on you to be their savior. Because love that lasts isn't built on emotion, It's built on foundation. And foundation isn't sexy, it's not glamorous, it's not Instagrammable, but it's necessary. Maybe they were in a season where they were healing from something no one knew about, walking through betrayal that almost broke their ability to trust, wrestling with depression or anxiety that made them question their value. They had to do the hard internal work, not because they were weak, but because they were being made strong enough to handle the weight of loving you. Because real love takes capacity, it takes maturity, and you can't get that from books or podcasts. You get it from experiences, from nights when you cry out to God saying, I don't know why you're doing this, but I trust you anyway. That's the dark room. That's the development. We often forget this. Before David was king, he was a shepherd, alone in the fields, watching sheep, forgotten by his own father when the prophet came. But while the world didn't see him, God did. And in that isolation, God was developing him, teaching him how to fight lions and bears, preparing his heart to be pure, strengthening his character. And when it was time to step into his calling, he wasn't confused, he was ready. That's how your soulmate is being prepared, quietly, faithfully, in the fields of life where no one claps, where no one affirms, but God sees, God knows. Sometimes we want our person to be ready on our timeline. But what we don't realize is that if we rush the process, we weaken the outcome. A cake taken out of the oven too soon collapses. A butterfly forced out of the cocoon too early can't fly. The same is true with people. You don't want a soulmate who shows up too early and bleeds all over you from wounds they didn't have time to heal. You want someone who went through the dark and let it make them better, not bitter. So when you pray, don't just ask God to bring them into your life. Ask Him to develop them while they wait. Because every hour in the dark is creating a depth that shallow love can't touch. It's creating strength that doesn't quit when life gets hard. It's building someone who doesn't just love you for how you look or what you do, but who sees your soul and knows how to cover it in prayer, in patience, in purpose. One day, when they finally walk into your life, you'll be tempted to think it all just happened. But what you won't see are the nights they cried themselves to sleep, the moments they wanted to give up, the journals filled with prayers and questions, the character that was built in silence, the healing that happened when no one was clapping for them. And you'll know this kind of person, this kind of love, it doesn't just appear. It's developed in the dark. We don't like pain. No one does. But pain is often the classroom where purpose is taught. The truth is, your soulmate didn't just arrive at purpose on a smooth path. They didn't just wake up one day knowing who they were, what they carried, or who they were called to love. They were rerouted through heartbreaks, through setbacks, through detours that didn't make sense at the time. But every painful step had a purpose. Every delay was divine. Every tear was seen. And while they were trying to figure out why life felt like it was falling apart, God was saying, I'm not punishing you, I'm positioning you. Your soulmate didn't just survive pain, they were shaped by it. And I don't mean the kind of pain that just stings for a moment. I mean the kind that lingers, the kind that keeps you up at night wondering, why did they leave? Or why did I have to go through that? Maybe they loved someone who didn't love them back. Maybe they gave their heart to someone who used them. Maybe they thought they found the one, only to discover that person was never sent by God. That's the kind of pain that makes you want to shut down, to stop believing, to stop hoping. But God didn't let the pain have the final word, because God is a master at using what was meant to destroy us to deliver us instead. He doesn't waste pain. He doesn't ignore it, He reroutes it. That means when something should have broken your soulmate, God used it to build them. When something should have left them bitter, He used it to make them better. When life took them places they never planned to go, God met them there and started crafting a new map. One that would lead them not just to healing, but to you. Sometimes pain closes doors, so we'll stop trying to walk through them. Your soulmate might have had dreams that didn't work out, a business that failed, a career that felt promising but collapsed. And in those moments, they questioned everything. But God was there in the silence, whispering, I know this hurts, but I'm still guiding you. And the most beautiful part, that pain wasn't just random. It was specific, strategic. It taught them how to be tender. And here's the part that's gonna bless you. When you meet them, you'll see traces of those painful chapters, but you'll also see the glory that came out of them. You'll see someone who knows how to love patiently because they once loved someone who rushed them. Someone who knows how to communicate because they lived through silence. Someone who knows how to stay because they've been left. They won't just bring you romance, they'll bring you wisdom, compassion, depth. You might not even realize it, but the person who's gonna love you best is the one who learned through pain who they weren't supposed to be with. Because that process taught them how to recognize you when you show up. Pain sharpened their discernment. It showed them the difference between attention and intention, between chemistry and commitment. So when they meet you, they won't waste time playing games. They'll know, they'll see the purpose in you because they discovered the purpose in themselves through pain. That pain also did something else. It drew them closer to God. Because when life hits hard, when people disappoint, when dreams fall apart, there's nowhere to go but to the one who never leaves. Your soulmate might have found God in their darkest hour. They may have cried out in desperation and found peace they couldn't explain. And it was that moment, that holy, unseen moment where everything changed, where God said, now you're ready. Not perfect, not finished, but ready, because now you don't love from a place of need, you love from a place of purpose. So if you've been wondering if all the waiting is worth it, let this encourage you. While you've been becoming, they've been becoming too. Through pain, through pruning, through the places they never thought they'd go. But God was never lost. He was always in control. He didn't cause all the pain, but He rerouted it. And when your lives finally align, you'll see that the detours were never delays. They were divine directions, leading them straight to one of the hardest, most necessary lessons God teaches the person meant for you is how to be alone. Not lonely, but alone. And there's a difference. Loneliness makes you chase anything that looks like comfort. Being alone, when taught by God, makes you whole. It teaches you how to be complete before the relationship, not because of it. And that's exactly what your soulmate had to go through. They had to learn how to live, love, and walk with confidence, even when no one was texting back, even when no one was calling, even when the world made them feel like something was missing. They weren't missing anything. They were in training to become the kind of person who doesn't cling to people just because they're afraid of silence. Training to recognize their worth outside of being chosen. Because if you don't know your value when you're alone, you'll settle for someone who discounts your worth when you're together. And God loved them too much to let that happen. So he allowed the quiet. He allowed the seasons of singleness. He allowed the Friday nights where they sat with a movie instead of a date. The birthdays where no one planned anything special. The holidays where they smiled in pictures but wrestled with the question, when is it my turn? And in those sacred, unseen moments, God wasn't ignoring them. He was forming them. He was showing them how to be okay with their own company, how to enjoy the sound of their own thoughts, how to worship when no one was watching, how to build their future without waiting for someone to come build it with them. Because you don't want a soulmate who's needy. You want someone who knows how to stand strong so that when storms come, and they will come, they're not looking to you to fill the emptiness. They've already been filled by something higher, someone greater. They've been rooted, anchored, grounded. And that kind of strength isn't developed in relationships, it's developed in solitude. Maybe your soulmate had to walk through a season where they were tempted to cling to the wrong person, someone who gave just enough attention to keep them hanging on, someone who loved the idea of them but couldn't handle the reality of their depth. And just when they were about to compromise, about to settle, about to believe the lie that this is all love is, God pulled them back. Not because he wanted them to hurt, but because he wanted them to be healed. He wanted them to stop outsourcing their peace, stop waiting for someone else to validate their identity. He wanted them to discover that they were already whole in him. So he took them through the silence, through the long nights, through the empty inbox. And one day, they stopped seeing being alone as a punishment. They started seeing it as preparation. They stopped scrolling through social media, comparing their timeline to someone else's. They stopped chasing love that made them feel less than. They stopped asking, why not me? And started saying, thank you, God, for keeping me from what I thought I wanted. And in that stillness, they found strength. In that stillness, they found clarity. They discovered who they are, what they value, what they'll tolerate, and what they absolutely will not. They started dreaming again, not from desperation, but from wholeness. They started walking through life with peace, not because someone held their hand, but because God held their heart. And that is the kind of person you want to do life with. Because when you meet them, you won't have to rescue them. You won't have to fix them. You won't have to constantly reassure them that you love them. They'll already know how to stand in love, not fall into it. And when hard days come and you feel distant, they won't run. They won't chase distractions. They'll remember how they stood alone before, and they'll stand again with you this time. The world teaches people to fear being alone, but God uses it to prepare the best. Because if your soulmate had never learned how to be alone, they would have clung to the first person who paid attention. They would have chosen out of fear, not faith. They would have picked someone who filled the moment but robbed the future. And you would have never met the version of them who is whole, healed, and ready. So be encouraged. The time they spent alone wasn't wasted, it was sacred. Every quiet moment was an answer to your prayer. Every night they spent choosing peace over pressure was a brick laid in the foundation of your future together. And when they finally walk into your life, you won't just see someone who was waiting, you'll see someone who was becoming. God taught them how to be alone, not to leave them there, but so when they finally found you, they wouldn't cling to you from emptiness. They would join you from overflow. There's a kind of heartbreak that doesn't make sense at first. The kind where everything seemed right, the timing felt perfect, the connection was strong, the affection was mutual. You couldn't see any red flags, only green lights. And then, without warning, it ended. Abruptly, painfully, maybe even unfairly. Your soulmate might have gone through a relationship like that, one they thought would be forever, one they prayed over, one they were ready to commit to with their whole heart, and yet God allowed it to break. Not to punish them, but to protect them. Because sometimes God will let your heart break so your soul doesn't get lost. There are people who can love you to a certain extent, but they aren't equipped to carry the weight of your destiny. They can make you feel seen, but not supported. They can offer passion, but not purpose. They can speak words that soothe your emotions, but fail to feed your spirit. And if your soulmate had stayed with that person, if God had allowed it to continue, they might have built a life that looked beautiful on the outside, but was breaking them slowly on the inside. So God stepped in and ended what your soulmate didn't have the strength to walk away from. He let it break, not because he wanted to hurt them, but because he wanted to heal them on a deeper level. Because what breaks your heart can often be the very thing that saves your future. Your soulmate didn't know it then, but that breakup wasn't rejection, it was redirection. It was God whispering, I see what you can't see. I know where this leads, and I love you too much to let this go on. They might have begged for that relationship to work. They might have cried out, asking, why did they leave? Or what did I do wrong? But the truth is, God wasn't just protecting them from that person. He was protecting you too. Because had that relationship continued, they would have entered your life broken in a way that love couldn't fix. They would have carried baggage too heavy for any human heart to hold. And God knows that love is not built on rescue, it's built on readiness. So He allowed the heartbreak so their soul could be free when they finally found you. There are moments in life when we think losing someone will destroy us, but what your soulmate discovered is that losing the wrong person is sometimes the only way to find the right path. That heartbreak humbled them. It made them go deeper. It forced them to ask questions they never asked before. Who am I without them? What do I really want? Why do I keep choosing people who can't love me well? Those aren't easy questions, but they are holy ones. And in that space of pain, God did His best work. He started healing wounds that weren't new, they were just exposed. He began addressing patterns of codependency, cycles of people-pleasing, and the belief that love must come through struggle. He started rewiring the way your soulmate saw themselves, not as someone who needed to be chosen to feel valuable, but as someone who was already valuable because they were chosen by God. That heartbreak taught them that closure doesn't always come from people. Sometimes it comes from growth, from grace, from finally seeing that not everything that feels good is meant to stay. And over time, through prayer, through silence, through reflection, your soulmate, they stopped blaming themselves. They stopped trying to rewrite the past. They stopped chasing people who were never meant to stay. And little by little, their heart healed. Stronger, wiser, softer but not naive, guarded but not afraid, ready not to fall into love blindly, but to walk into love with vision. That heartbreak did something else too. It taught them empathy. Now they don't just love with experience, they love with understanding. They know what it feels like to be left without explanation, to be ghosted, to be strung along. And because of that, they'll never play games with your heart. When they love you, it'll be real, pure, intentional, because they know what love isn't. And that clarity only came through pain. So when you meet them, you'll see someone who didn't just survive a heartbreak, they were transformed by it. Someone who carries wisdom in their eyes and peace in their presence. Someone who won't need you to fill a void because they already let God do that. And when they love you, it won't come from desperation, it'll come from depth. God broke their heart before someone else could break their soul. And that single act of mercy may be the reason your love story will thrive instead of crash. Because your soulmate isn't showing up to be rescued. They're showing up ready. Ready to love without fear, ready to trust again. Ready to build a life that's not based on fantasy, but faith. A life that starts not in perfection, but in the healing God already completed, in the heartbreak you'll never have to relive because they already walked through it and they walked out. Sometimes the greatest act of love is delay, not denial. Delay. Because there's a version of you now and there's a version of you that is coming. A stronger you, a wiser you, a more spiritually aligned, emotionally steady, purpose-focused you, and the person God has for you, they deserve that version. Not the one still healing from insecurity, still rushing to prove worth, still loving out of fear of abandonment. So what did God do? He put time between you and them, not to torment you, but to transform you. You prayed for them to come sooner. You asked God, where are they? And heaven answered, I'm working on them, but I'm also working on you. Because loving the right person the wrong way can feel just as painful as loving the wrong person completely. And God knew there were lessons you needed to live through before you could love through. And God knew there were lessons you needed to live through before you could love through. You couldn't skip the process. You couldn't fast forward to the future. He needed you to sit in the now and grow. Think back on who you were just a few years ago. You were doing the best you could, yes. But would you have recognized what healthy love looked like? Would you have embraced someone kind, or would you have pushed them away out of suspicion, thinking love had to be dramatic to be real? Maybe you were still running from your past, still attached to old patterns, still thinking you had to prove you were worthy of being chosen. And God loved you too much to bring someone into that space, so He waited. He waited until your voice no longer trembled when you set boundaries. He waited until you stopped chasing potential and started recognizing patterns. He waited until you no longer called loneliness a curse, but began to see it as a classroom. One where you learned how to be with yourself before trying to be with someone else. He waited until you could distinguish peace from boredom and passion from chaos. He waited until you knew your calling, your values, and your worth, not because someone told you, but because God Himself revealed it to you. There were days when it felt like everyone else was getting what you were praying for. Engagement photos on your feed, wedding invitations in the mail, happy couples walking past you in cafes while you sat alone with a journal full of questions. And you thought God forgot you, but no, God was preparing you, not punishing, not delaying out of cruelty, delaying because purpose requires preparation, because love, real love, requires emotional stamina, spiritual insight, and relational maturity. Imagine your soulmate walking into your life 2 years ago when you were still unsure of yourself, still second-guessing every move. Would you have been able to receive their love without fear? Would you have believed their words or constantly tested their loyalty, expecting them to leave? God saw what you couldn't see, so He slowed the story down to give you the time you didn't know you needed. And what happened in that space of delay? You stopped needing someone to complete you. You started building your own life, investing in your gifts, deepening your friendships, healing your wounds, unlearning what love is not. You grew, you bloomed, you matured, not all at once, but steadily, quietly, beautifully. And the person you are now, they're gonna love that person, because now you can love with clarity, with intention, with grace. Now you don't fear commitment. You understand it's a covenant. Now you don't give your heart away because you're scared of being alone. You give it because you're ready to build. You're no longer looking for a savior in skin. You're looking for a partner in purpose. And when your soulmate meets you now, they'll be encountering someone who's not perfect, but who's prepared. There's something sacred about a love that meets you after the fire, after the waiting, after the growing pains. A love that finds you ready. And your soulmate, they don't just deserve your heart, they deserve your healed heart, your whole heart, your surrendered, steady, God-aligned heart. That kind of love, it's worth the delay. It's worth the time you thought was wasted, because nothing was ever wasted, because nothing was ever wasted. Every season of singleness was a setup. Every night you wondered if love would ever come was a night God whispered, soon, but not yet. You had to become the version of you that wouldn't self-sabotage, wouldn't settle, wouldn't silence your needs for the sake of keeping someone. The version that wouldn't lose themselves in love, but would show up fully, honest, unafraid, unshakable. That version is the answer to your soulmate's prayer, just as they are the answer to yours. To thank God for the delay, for every not yet that saves you from stepping into something too soon. Because the love that's coming your way will not be shaken by time. It was built through it. And when the moment finally comes and they walk into your life, you won't just say, finally. You'll say, now I understand why it took so long.